Welcome. Thank you once again for hanging out with us. This is the one and only IT and the D Show, broadcasting from our respective homes. This is episode 406, and I'm your host, Bob Waltonspiel, hanging out with producer Randy Walker. Guest this week, the man, the myth, the legend, musician, CEO of web development company Loud Baby, producer, storyteller extraordinaire, the absolute legend, Tommy Onyx. It's a pleasure to have you on, sir. You can find us online, itinthedcomp25318, and do us a favor, give us a like on the socials, subscribe to us everywhere. Fine podcasts are sold. Hey, just a quick shout out. I always like job fairs, and I like people that are hiring IT people. UWM has a job fair the 10th, which is Tuesday in August. Check them out online. I think there's an Eventbrite for you to, if Randy, if you have the link, if not, we'll put it on the Twitters. If not, just Google it. But yeah, UWM, they're hiring hundreds of people every week, tons in IT, and the IT department's doubled since I've known them a couple of years ago. But yeah, check that out, and it's good stuff. So Tommy, I the first thing that when I remembered you were on the show yesterday, tomorrow, I went and checked out, and everyone's been talking about it, the Woodstock 99 documentary on HBO Max, and I knew they had ties to everything, and you were like, I didn't catch it yet. And I remember when it happened because I was like 26 and it was big on MTV. But do you know the whole story about like Woodstock 99?
No, I have a couple of connections to it, which would be Kid Rock.
Yep.
And ICP.
So
yeah,
I'd love to hear if you ever talk to them, or I'd love to hear their take on this documentary because they spun it in like 2 to 3 different ways. It was kind of like the hippies versus the entrepreneurs, and like bad. And the entrepreneurs are like, what are you crabbing about? So it was like it was really poor looking on the people that, anyway, long story short, there's a abandoned hangar, mid-state, Air Force Base, mid-state New York. So like perfect. It's fenced in, barbed wire. We'll get everybody in there. Life is good. So everybody piles in on the Friday. It's all asphalt. It's 150 degrees. They have maybe 50 porta potties and bottles of water. I'm talking not a 24 ounce like this. I'm talking like the little Ice Mountain. You know, they were charging $4 for a bottle of water. They had like 6 like free water stations that people were bathing in. They had like open air showers. And if you look at the mix of the crowd, they were like $180 tickets. So if you look at 99, crazy money, but all the porta potties overflowed Friday, the first day, by like 7 p.m. The entire campground was flooded because somebody decided to puncture the water, the pipe, because they couldn't get to the line was so long to get to water. There was people like sleeping under semis because it was so hot on the asphalt, and the east and west stages were literally a mile apart.
So, well, yeah, I mean, what I can also say is that like that kind of experience, you know, I had a lot of those kind of festival experiences because around that, you know, all through the mid to late 90s, I was touring with Inner City. And it was all like, you know, we'd go to Europe and play these giant festivals, like ridiculous. And they were just like the porta potty vomit poo animals that I got to see were like nothing I've ever experienced. And the degree of sort of depravity was shocking and amazing.
They were talking about they had the laundry list of the illnesses that they have, the triage trucks. This guy's like, I worked in Vietnam. Like, obviously people weren't getting shot and killed, but like the laundry list of people coming in here was as long. Like there was a guy that died of hypothermia because he hadn't drank water in like 7 hours. He needed to stay for Metallica.
Yeah.
So the Saturday night was like Limp Corn. I'm not sure the right order. Korn, Limp Bizkit, Metallica. So everyone was like, I need to stay for those 3. Well, you're talking from 8 p.m. until midnight, 1 a.m., where you're like stuck in the sea of humanity. Like it was like it looked like a living hell to me. I'm going to fast forward, but it got so bad. So imagine like Kid Rock plays Saturday at 1 o'clock. People are already tired.
Right.
Now by Sunday, people are exhausted. And they started raiding the semi trucks, like looting and like stealing the food because like people couldn't get access to food, sleeping on pizza boxes. And then like just stealing water and handing it out because it got so ridiculous. So then they just said, burn it down. And they were blaming it on the Red Hot Chili Peppers because they said, let me stand next to your fire after someone made a bonfire. You've seen the video, right? There's like 15 bonfires in this sea of like 200,000 people. Like literally the one guy was like, it was literally like Lord of the Flies. Like MTV had to bounce because every time like Carson Daly would come on stage, like booing like he was Adolf Hitler. Like it was insane how much hatred there was. So like people are like, we're going to dip. Security finally was like, put your credentials away, put your shirt inside out, do not talk to anybody, dip, get out. Like it was that much of it. They had to bring state troopers in. Like that's why they've never seen another Woodstock since. It's crazy. You got to watch it though.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, there hasn't been something right with that. There hasn't been something like that since, really.
Well, Lollapalooza was just in Chicago. They had 400,000 people there. Yeah. And then that year, 99 with Woodstock, Coachella was on the West Coast. So they were talking about the difference. Like, look at how Coachella ran things. Like it was a well-oiled machine. And they're like, you know, Woodstock 99 was a perfect example of like corporate greed and like trying to just milk, you know, because they said Coachella, you walked in, they gave you a water bottle and there was filling stations every 20 feet. Yeah. You know, they like it was done right. They got, you know, probably more. Anyway, not to get too much into it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I also think that, well, isn't like Coachella is also like, can you even get in without spending $150 or $200 to even, it's also like a sort of a different level of, it feels to me like Lollapalooza was always a little bit more like punters can come.
Yeah.
You know, Coachella is really.
I mean, that's more. Yeah. That's on the high end. There's a festival in Pasadena next year with like, it's headlined by Morrissey and Bauhaus and Devo and pretty much every 80s band I love, you know, from Echo and the Bunnymen to Psych Furs to Violent Femmes. Like VIP's $800, you know, general admissions like 180. So I look at this going, all right, that's 180. But I go 20 years ago, it was 180. I'm like, you know, it was absolutely nuts. But then they showed Lollapalooza where there was a hole in the fence and kids were piling in.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got to start with you dropped Inner City. When I found out you were part of that, like I kind of the little kid in me, because that was one of the, like, in my opinion, one of the original house tracks. I grew up with. I loved electronic music since I first heard Kraftwerk, and you know, this is a global. Like you can play that song right now in any nightclub in the world, and you will get people pack the dance floor. If you don't know what it is, the song's called "Good Life." How the hell did that happen? I guess you know, was this a trial and error thing? How did you hook up with with that whole thing?
So I came to Detroit from Boston. I had studied at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, and met up with a guy who was from Michigan, Dennis White, who we may talk about more later if you want. Won a Grammy a couple years ago for a Depeche Mode remix, best remix of the year. Really one of the best creative talents I've ever met, which is why, you know, I called up my dad in 1988 and said, "Hey, I'm quitting college and I'm moving to Detroit."
Every father's dream, right?
Absolutely. And he's passed now, but I'm happy to say that I was able to tell him before he died. Remember that guy Dennis I quit school and moved to Detroit for? He just won the Grammy.
Right.
So
that's like, great. Yeah.
I'm a good train spotter. I mean, I see really far into the future. But yeah, so we had been doing a killer group in Boston. Reeves Gabrels, who went on to play with David Bowie for years. Tin Machine was our guitar player. And so we had a group called Reasoning with Angels. Stupid for a second. Then that turned into Charm Farm. which was the brand that became known in Michigan a little bit in the early 90s.
So Charm Farm was a legend in my high school because I went to high school with Steve Zuccaro.
There you go.
Right. So that was the buzz in the hallways was always, you know.
Yep.
And then when we're going to the post bar and, you know, when we're all 21, 22,
absolutely.
You know, yeah.
Yep. So, yeah. So, I mean, so Dennis, we started doing this thing there. And then he's from Michigan. And it was kind of like, I knew we'd kind of have like a sort of a setup out here. And so, yeah, so I took the big risk, bought an MG from a buddy for $1,500, got me all the way to the border of Ohio and Michigan before I blew a rod because I didn't know that little cars need oil from time to time.
No.
Absolutely.
I'm dealing with it now with my daughter's Mini Cooper. Trust me.
And I had Milli Vanilli hair. Actually, I didn't have the braids yet. I take that back. But I did have I had slash hair with the leopard tights and all. I mean, I was not exactly like Western Ohio on the interstate.
Right. Standing on the side of the road with a thumb out with
yeah. So, and there's no, cell phones or internet or anything. So anyway, they come and get me, bring me back to Detroit. I've been here ever since. Love Michigan. But we came here. We had a loft in Eastern Market and Raya Pell and Gratiot. And the great thing was when Dennis and I were in Boston, it was like Boston was a really, at that time especially, that was much more of a music town industry hub than Detroit was. Right?
Was it really?
Yeah, Till Tuesday. You had the Cars that were still late 80s, right? So bands were still kind of coming out of there. Lemonheads, I think.
Oh,
some shit that I don't listen to, but that people like. But and it really had a scene there. So it was kind of like, my boy Dennis is like, yeah, but we go to Detroit and it's like we can live cheap in a loft. It's expensive here, and so I was like. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew he was at Berkeley in a school of geniuses. He was at the top, right? So you're there. You're either hanging your own shingle or you're finding somebody else who you're going to jump on the coattails of.
Well, you told me something when we were having beers where it's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. If you actually graduated from Berkeley, you were a failure.
Yeah, totally.
Man, the ones that made it or the ones that dropped out before they were done.
Josh Linkner, right? One of the biggest, tech entrepreneurs in Michigan. We worked together, and the first thing that I'd been doing some humble work for him, and I finally get brought in to meet the boss. And I knew he went to Berkeley, and you immediately, alma mater, man, you're talking about the pizza joint you used to eat at, where the hot girls were.
Right.
That was our way of bonding. But it was like, once he found out that I dropped out, it was like we just got that much closer.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's like, man, it's the arts. It's like it's entrepreneurial at the baseline. So if you make it through 4 years and graduate, it might mean you're a great student, and it might mean you're a really good musician, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the right industry for you. Because it's like, you should be there in that pressure cooker, finding the people, connecting, and getting out of there. Sure. But that was always, from the moment I got there, that was always my intent. So I meet Dennis. It's the right thing. We've done stuff together. I was like, this guy has the ability, not only he's a great talent, but he was a good dude. That was huge. I wouldn't have just quit school and move across the country with an asshole. So he was a good dude. And, and he was also had the ability to rally people to his cause. I mean, we got these bebop jazz players, and there was a real cultural thing in Berkeley. It was so our time in the 80s was the guys like us were bleaching our hair and had holes in our jeans. And then you had the jazz guys, the guys that were serious, and it was there was a real division. Dennis could get those snotty, snobby, killer musicians to come bomb around with us and play with us. So that was always kind of our thing. And even when
that's what I always That's what I was told my daughter when she got into band. I said, at least play an instrument that you could maybe be in a ska band when you're in college. So that was, don't play the clarinet or something stupid.
Yeah, French horn is tricky. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was, so we just, I saw that, he had that ability to kind of rally people together, and that was a big part of it too. So we come out here and, we're in Eastern Market in this loft, and accidentally Derek May is our downstairs neighbor. Juan Atkins is our downstairs neighbor to the side. And
so if you don't know who those two are, they're literally the godfathers of Detroit techno. If you look up like the origination of techno music, they're two of the three heads that are on the Mount Rushmore.
And the third one was Kevin Saunderson.
Right.
He moved in after us. And, honestly, it's
how fate is that though? That is fate. If you think about it in retrospect, that, just the fact that you were, just happenstance, they happen to be the three godfathers of tech. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make. There's so many there's so many weird things like that, Bob, in my history of like, how could that lucky, not really a religious guy, so that doesn't work. Not a zodiac guy, that doesn't really. I just don't know what to make of it.
Sure,
right? It becomes this sort of thing where you're like, that's why as a parent, I'm always like, man, my kids cannot rely on being as lucky as I was, because it's impossible. But yes. So we kind of move into this epicenter. We're playing this we're loud, raucous. I will say, I can do like the humble thing, but I will say like Charm Farm, we were pretty badass. Like we were kind of doing, we said like if you put like Prince and Led Zeppelin in a room, what would they do? And then like Parliament Funkadelic got thrown in that room. And then Red Hot Chili Peppers got thrown in that room. David Bowie and David Sylvian were in that room. It was a real fucked up kind of mix of stuff. But, what it really translated into was it was like we were just edgy punk rock enough that the early 90s punk rock press in Detroit always gave us a pass. If you would have asked us, we wanted to be like In Excess.
Right.
Shameless. Chicks. And we take good pictures and at that stage of our life,
Yeah. They were great actually.
And we were actually never like apologized for that. But I'm always amazed at kind of how we sort of got a pass. But I do think it was also because we were just really good.
Well, you were one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, was the first that like brought in sampling almost into like a rock song. Because I'm sure there was some beforehand, but like, if I remember correctly, you guys said like, this, obviously Ministry and stuff did it too, but you guys were one of the first. It was like a nice poppy, happy, fun. You could play it today and people would go, wow, this is a great tune. But that was it.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think, all right. So I come out here fall of 88. New Year's Eve, 1989, we do a show at the Premier Center on Van Dyke, gone now. That was the old, like,
oh, yeah,
Sinatra place, right? You're from here.
Over at Humperdinck every other weekend, pretty much.
Kid Rock opened for us. That's where I met Bob. That's where I met Mikey Clark.
Wow.
So that'll be a sort of a hinge point for a lot of stories. But, but we did that show by 1990. Well, that's into 89. We find out in the spring of 89 that we're going to do this inner city tour because Kevin, back to your original thing about Good Life.
Yeah.
Kevin already had Good Life. It was a hit. So now he's in the loft next to us, and Virgin Records, still owned by Branson at the time, is like, okay, you're a band with a hit. You got to tour it. There's no dance music culture yet. There's no DJ culture. Nobody knows what to do with that.
No.
You're a band. A band needs to tour to promote the record. So we're a band. Kevin, I don't think had any sense. And I have a Led Zeppelin Jimmy Page story that I can tell you, which may be of interest some years later with Kevin. But, we're upstairs playing like loud guitar music, Zeppelin, but with like big break beats and shit. And he was like, well, I need a band. Well, you guys don't sound terrible. Will you be my band? So how that came back to Detroit was we're still doing Charm Farm. Now, Dennis and I are become, we're inner city. Dennis was the music director in the beginning of that. I took over the role later when he and I were like not talking for a while. But we go over to Europe and dance music and guitars were already merging, right? So the whole kind of Depeche Mode, Depeche Mode, but even more so like New Order, what they were doing, which turned into Happy Mondays and that whole Manchester scene. Then groups like Jesus Jones, EMF, right? Kind of one-hit wonders in America.
Right.
They did a bit more overseas, but
yeah, but those are songs you can, again, those are songs that are still alive today. You can play EMF tomorrow.
Yep. They were doing like rock music with big break beats.
Yep.
And also shamelessly poppy too, right? But there was
an Information Society maybe started that. They were early.
We got the gig at the Premier Center from the manager of Information Society.
Oh, okay. Go figure.
That's how we got that gig.
Yeah.
And we were actually supposed to do a gig with them. And I think the singer got sick or there's some shit went down. But yeah, I mean, Information Society. I mean, in fact, I just heard that Pure Energy song. I was like, damn, that was all right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we were kind of, that's sort of where we were. So we were coming from like, growing up in the new wave thing, guitar music too. But, I think I'll speak for me. I grew up in Florida. Like, thank God I was in a Catholic school with one black kid in my entire class. Thank God I sat next to him in a class because he turned me on to Prince. I didn't grow up in Michigan where you'd have Electrifying Mojo, like spreading the gospel.
Oh, yeah.
Orlando, Florida in the 80s was pretty much a cultural desert in many ways.
I got shoeboxes still full of Mojo cassettes that I used to set my alarm for like midnight when I was, 11 to tape. Yeah.
No, you guys were lucky. So me, I was like, I did discover, I'm the youngest in the family. So like older siblings had passed down some Bowie and Stones and Stones, Bowie, Beatles, Doors, that stuff. And I and then when like I said, I got introduced to Prince, it was like controversy era and it just blew my mind. And at that age, like all the sexy bits and just, he plays all the instruments. It was just so incredible. So I got on that really early on and that was really then opened the door to like, you were into Prince, then you got, who's Sly and the Family Stone? Who's James Brown? And again, I expect people from Michigan, it was easier for you guys, but a lot of parts of the country, like if you're a white kid in the suburbs, right?
So what I'm teaching my daughter now is, I'm a huge Daft Punk fan. I love them.
Yeah.
And I love the way they hear things that I could never hear to put together what they put together. So I grabbed for her like 15 songs. I put a Spotify list together of all the stuff that got sampled from them. And I said, listen to that stuff. That's the old funk from the 70s this group heard this and kind of made it theirs. Yep. And then now she's into this whole, like, they're listening to like going way back, all this, like where the origination came from. And yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. So we kind of, that's sort of where, that had a big influence. And even, one of the things I think is important as we were a good band that had some good songs, but I also think a big thing that Charm Farm did was we made events that we happened to be a part of. So we would make events that were awesome. We're going to headline them because we're doing the event. But you could go out to the event, not know who we are, not even care. We would do epically short sets. I always think of Purple Rain where Prince comes out, plays 2 songs, and then drops the mic. And the timer like, what's this 2-song shit? We would just come out and we were always like, and I'm still of this mindset of like, be a genius and then edit it in half. Like whatever you do, that's great. Do that. And then you always benefit from cutting that in half.
Make them want more. Sure.
So that was always our thing. We're like, well, if you don't like this,
we don't have to cut this podcast in half, do we? I'm just.
Well, that's up to Randy, I think, right?
Totally is. Yeah.
I may need him to cut it more than that. You and I'll talk offline.
That's fair. That's fair.
But you know, we would like, we figured that, okay, you come out to the event, there's going to be DJs, you know, we made sure that it was a crowd that you wanted to be in at the time. That's a complicated thing, but there was a lot of things that we worked our way into kind of the connections of the scene to kind of be able to assemble meaningful events, right?
Well, no, it makes with the crowd thing. It goes back to the Woodstock '99 thing. They had Jewel and Sheryl Crow playing like in between every heavy metal band, Megadeth, known to man.
Yeah,
and like people are just like, all right, this is the time to go get food or try to go get a water.
Well, yeah,
crowd was dead.
Yeah, no, but that was always our thing too. Is like you come out to the event, and if you don't like Charm Farm, go take a piss, go get a drink. We're done by the time you get back.
Sure.
And if it's amazing, if you think it's great, well, then you're going to come to the next one. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of always sort of our thing. But that was actually quite, especially in a local music scene where it tends to be self-indulgent, you know, Spinal Tap, the bass player wrote this, you know, we're going to play for like, you know, we're going to outstay our welcome because we're artists. And, you know, we were just not like, and then the other thing is we threw.
So did you eat the brown M&Ms then? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. We wouldn't eat the brown M&Ms.
No. Do you know what that story is?
Oh, the Van Halen story?
Yeah. That was Van Halen's rider.
Yeah, no. Well, I have an inner city rider story. That's actually on video. I can share with you at some point. Yeah, I mean, we were really like, you know, we'll do the show, and then we're also going to have an amazing after party back at the Loft, and that was a big part of it too. So we just kind of, I think we sort of got the whole experience and sort of did that. It was super great and really kind of set us up for the next thing. So then Kevin is our neighbor. He's borrowing like eggs and cheese from us. I remember the first time after he moved in, it was talk about, the guy downstairs from us, he's got like a top 10 record in the UK. Really? It's like house music. And I was like, ew. Now I'd been to a house music club one time.
Right.
There's a life lesson here. So I'm living in Boston. I'm at Berklee College of Music, which is snobby music conservatory. It wasn't like classical music, but it was still like, it's all the Olympics of like, how fast can you play?
Sure.
You know, very snobby. And I will say that was never my thing. I've always been open to like new ideas. That's like sort of cornerstone to me, is like wanting to learn new stuff. If I don't get something, I don't want to hate it right off the bat. I'll just shut up and listen, kind of thing. So, but I remember going with my best mate at the time and my girlfriend. We drove down to New York City. We went to a club in the Bowery called The World. And this would have been in probably the beginning of 1988, maybe late 87 even. And it was the first time I heard house music. And at that point, it was a drum machine and some out-of-tune vocals over like just like a slap bass sound played with one finger. And I was like, and I'm standing there with my like $20 drink in 1988 in a plastic cup. And this, you know, we didn't get any like VIP love getting into The World. We were like sitting there and going like, if I ever play this goddamn music from hell, this is the worst shit. And literally, man, within a year, I'm touring with the biggest band that ever made that kind of music.
Right.
And that really, like, also too, like, I always reflect on that. I'm like, man, if I don't get something, your new country music that you're really into, my inclination to be like, that's some, all right, you're into it, Bob. Like, let me listen to that. Right. And, but that was kind of, so I, get out here to Detroit, find out that our neighbor's like this big house music guy. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Heard Good Life. Dennis brought like a cassette tape. I don't even think well, no, that had been out already. Like, but no, actually, you know what? Sorry. Big Fun had been a hit already. Good Life was just coming out. That's
so I just heard Good Life. I got to tell this story where I first heard Good Life. I'll never forget it. It was I worked at Merry Go Round and DJs at Lakeside and Oakland Mall.
Nice.
And it was on the training video. and we're like they like the people walking down it. And for some reason, vividly in my head, I can remember that moment like it was last week. I can't remember what I ate, the cliche. I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, but that song and like that was the start of kind of my career in like keeping a notebook and like going to Record Time and singing, "Hey, I heard this song. What the hell is it?" Now it's Shazam. You can, but that was right. I used to write it on the notebook. Yep. And then I'd take it, but that was one of the first tracks I ever remember like trying to go. I had to go find this track.
Yeah, no, there were special records. It's Big Fun is out. It's already a hit. I get it. They play me Good Life. Dennis comes up with this tape. And for me, from my sort of pop sensibility, I can also connect this to my relationship with Trent Reznor. And the first time I heard his demos of Head Like a Hole and Terrible Lie, did not like industrial music at all. We'll circle back to that.
Okay, all right.
To me. But my thing was that I don't like house music. I don't like techno or whatever that was. I hear Good Life, and it just hit me at the level of like, it's a pop tune, right? With a good arrangement, good sounds, soulful vocal. It was like undeniable. So I was like, oh, this is house music too? Because my memory was like this terrible vocal out of tune over a bass line in a really rudimentary drum part. And that was kind of like put together and mixed and sophisticated enough that like, so I heard that and then I'm like, ooh, wow. One thing leads to another. He's got a tour. Kevin's got a tour to promote this record. We get hired on as the band. Not everybody in Charm Farm gets it because we need a guitar. So Steve wasn't a part of that.
Right.
But we ended up going up north to Gaylord, Michigan to rehearse for the first international techno music tour in a pole barn on a lake in Gaylord with like deer coming up to us as we're playing, like hitting like, Simmons drums and in the middle of a bar. It was the most surreal, weird experience. By the way, all of it's on video. And that's unusual then because video meant you had like a camera on your shoulder. And,
right.
But like it's interesting because it was all, we documented all of it. But yeah, and that was kind of, and then we were sort of off and honestly, like that whole travel experience, I met my wife through those tours.
Right.
I learned it ended up building the foundation for getting into, the business I have now. All that's, directly tied to just kind of that crazy, weird stars aligning experience that we got to do that.
I can't imagine. Like all we think about when you think about touring is the movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg, right? And you wake up in the morning and there's 50 people, you're like half naked on the floor and you're figuring out what the hell happened last night. Then you got to like basically chew down a couple Tylenol and take a swig of champagne and then you're going to do it all again the next night. How much of that's true in fabrication? Obviously it's a techno band. It's a little different, but than Motley Crue, but
Well, so I don't know that it was different in 1989 and 90 in the UK.
Right.
Okay. I don't think it was different. What I will say to you is that one thing that was really pretty amazing and fortunate, and I actually used Kevin Saunderson as kind of an inspiration or a kind of a, like I saw how his life was kind of working and it was a real inspiration to me. So, Kevin's he's a rock star in Europe. Straight up, right? That first tour over there, we played, the first gigs we ever did were two sold out shows at the Town and Country Club in London. And then we proceeded to play, I think the first tour in the UK was like a 2-week tour. We went, Manchester and Liverpool and Bristol and kind of went all over the country. And that was, in some ways, like it never got bigger than that. It was the private catering tour buses we had for many years. And that was the dream. There's some dreams when you achieve them, they're not what you expected and right. They're a little disappointing. The tour bus is exactly what I hoped it would be as a kid. And that's honestly, like, if I had to say like the one thing about like, you got to like have this brush with whatever for a period of time, yeah, the tour buses, man, like that was the best. So we kind of had that whole experience on that first tour there. You know, going from the venue to the tour bus, and people trying, like, they could get your hat off your head. They were just trying to take anything they could off of you.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, this is stuff that, like, I mean, other experiences, like talking to Mikey Clark about being around Kid Rock at the height of his success, and just scariness of fame when people are just like, you're no longer a human being. You're just like a thing that, like, has value if I can touch you or photograph you or steal something from you.
There was scary. When this might have been 01, 02, 99. I don't remember exactly what year, but I just remember that when Eminem bought that house on like a main road in Clinton Township, like on Hayes and like 18, you drive by and you're like, that's Eminem's house. You're like, what do you mean that's Eminem's house? Like, yeah, people camp out there. He needs to hire security. I'm like, that's when it moved to God, whenever. But like, people would say, like, I saw Eminem at Costco. Like, what do you mean you saw Eminem at Costco? Like, he was trying to be a normal human being, and I think the fame took him over, or took it over.
Well, I will say, like, locally in Detroit, Bob could hang. Like, Bob, I mean, I've had drinks with Bob at the WAB.
Yeah.
Like, this is after he was, like, super famous, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
When he was doing a thing at the Bears Den, he would show up for Howling Diablos.
Okay.
The period of time. Bears Den's gone now, but in Oak Park, right? And
yeah, he always came to the post bar.
He could come and hang, and he could totally do that. I mean, Eminem couldn't do that. If Eminem, the moment it was found out he was anywhere, the roads would be shut down like it's Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize, like, Bob Ritchie's famous and a rock star. Eminem is at a level that is really like Elvis. It's like Elvis, Michael Jackson level shit.
Right.
Like, he has to kind of be this Howard Hughes guy because he can't. And it's, I mean, a good friend of mine is John Quigley. Quig is, he's a video guy. Shot a lot of Eminem's video stuff during, like, his heyday and stuff. And, and he would talk about just how, Marshall just can't, he's really just, he has to leave a place, get in a car with tinted windows, be taken to some other place where he has to be snuck in the back all the time.
Right.
All the time. So yeah, that's another level of stuff.
Well, it's like guys like me wish they could be them, and the guys like them wish they could have just a normal, chill, I remember a pro wrestler friend of mine, like, just got back from the Tokyo Dome, walked down, it was one of the main events in front of 50,000 people, and he's sending me notes from the hotel room going, I just want to come home and be married and have kids and have like a 9 to 5. I'm like, dude, you just walked Tokyo Dome. I would kill to be in your shoes.
So here's the thing with Kevin. Back to that, then. That's a great segue back to that. He was able to do that. He'd fly to Europe. He'd fly to Asia.
Yeah.
Be rock star guy. Fly back to Detroit. No one knows or gives a fly. I can swear on this thing, right?
Sure.
Flying.
Sure.
Is, right? Like, and he raised a family. He was living in, White Lake.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I had a house in White Lake. And I'm like, remember, it was the thing is like, that was kind of used to be Klan territory, like, not long ago.
Morning, Kevin. Morning, Bill.
And then Kevin didn't give, he's like, I don't care. Nice neighborhood, nice house. He's just like, right on. But, it was the kind of thing where, like, and that's what I always admired. Like, he could have he could go be a rock star, party, do wild out, come home, normal shit. And I think a lot of these Detroit DJs have that. And that's a really not a common thing. So, I just coattailed a little sliver of that, but got to experience a little bit of, like, that sort of thing. So that's why I think it's interesting, because the stories that I have for being a guy who's I'm an office worker now, really, right?
Right.
But it's like a little bit of insight into that thing. And yeah, I mean, that first tour in the UK and the first tour we did in Japan, like, a band with like top 10 pop records, and kind of how people react to that. I mean, so here's another one I'll tell you. So our first trip to the UK. So we're also around the Milli Vanilli time.
Oh, God.
Okay. where the industry hasn't gotten used to the fact that like J-Lo's not going to sing all the parts because she's dancing and she's J-Lo.
Yeah.
And you're there for the show. This is not a bebop. This is not Miles Davis we're going to see. This is so it's like, what's the aesthetic? So I'm all for like, if you're Miles Davis or you're some jazzer and you're like, it's a tape, I'm pissed off. But if it's like a boy band and they're dancing, I don't really care what's live. Like,
right.
Come on. At this point with electronic music, there's no established, they were kind of filtering us through the aesthetic lexicon of like R&B groups who all played live and were all real badass musicians or whatever. So, Kevin's a producer. Okay. Now he's a great producer and I would never, he's absolutely brilliant. He's a genius, but he wasn't always like, at that point he's not like playing the parts on the keyboard. Right. We got over there to England and it was like, we had press people pulling members of us aside, trying to get dirt on the way this music was made.
Wow.
Okay. So we'd have a guy take me out for drinks, try to get me sauced up so I'd tell shit. Take Dennis out for drinks, So, Kevin's in this video, he's playing the guitar. Is he really playing? And look, we weren't going to be like, well, but it was really a thing where it was almost like, you're in a court and they're trying to like get testimonies and call you out. But that was a big deal then because it was like, God forbid, now Kevin would be like, he doesn't have to prove anything. He's like, I make all these records, however I make them,
Yeah.
I know how he makes them. And there's no question that, he's a rare talent. But at that point, he's a new artist. There's still this precedent of like, well, there's a lot of producers who like, they're ringleaders of stuff, right? Did George Clinton play anything on anything? I don't
think so.
But if George Clinton wasn't in the room, would any of that music been made?
Nope.
No. So there was this interesting thing in this time period of like, what, and even when we approached how to even play this music live, there's another thing where it was like, the first inner city tour was 100% live, no backing tracks. So we took computerized music and played it entirely live.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you, that was probably not the best ultimate aesthetic choice, but based on what the precedent was and what we knew, and we could do it. John Farm and the group of musicians, we were Berkeley people, we were like, we could take it and do it. And so, I think
it becomes almost like a MTV Unplugged kind of sound, no? Or how was it? Was it pretty accurate?
There's videos on YouTube you can find too. Yeah. No, it was it wasn't unplugged. It was, we had a killer drummer, Dave Schomer, who, played all the, he was able to basically like replicate a 4 on the floor house beat.
Okay.
Be like, which is not easy. But we were also like, and there's video, so I'm not giving away anything. Everybody can find it, but we would do like, we'd be doing like true to the form of like, Good Life, for example, right? Then we go into an extended thing, and then Dennis and I were really into James Brown and Prince, so we would be like, we're gonna go into a jam, and then we're gonna have Kevin go, everybody stop on the one. Good God. Right? Which, like, that is no business in really has no business in this kind of music.
Right.
But maybe it does. We were doing, you're doing what at the time. And then, subsequent tours, so Dennis was a music director, and then he and I went our separate ways. Then I sort of took over the helm, and then I kind of moved through, and also technology was evolving too. So that's a big part of the evolution of this music, which makes it, I think, particularly interesting because I don't think every era of music is so driven by technology, right? So we did tours with ADATs, like literally multi-track tape machines that they would break, and we'd not have an adapter in Spain to connect to the ADAT machine 10 minutes before the show. The guy would show up with the adapter we need, and all kinds of crazy, to eventually getting to the point where it's like, you know, now we do shows, it's all on your laptop. You know, literally laptop's got the whole show, backing tracks of that, and then you're doing stuff over it. But we kind of, you know, evolved the whole experience over, you know, how much of it should be live, how much of it should we be backing. There was a big thing in like the mid 90s to late 90s where, I mean, I remember, you know, having conversations, not in America, somewhere, I think Netherlands. Carl Craig was there for an event, talking with him. And, you know, at the time he was putting like all this gear on stage, and he was still like, I love Carl, and he's a real, like, he's just an organic purist about what he does. Just a real pure artist. But it, you know, it was really important to him that like all the sounds were coming from like live instruments that were sequenced. So you're gonna have a sequencer that's gonna be MIDI to like 20 other boxes on stage to make the sound that people hear. I respect that, but I also know from all the shows that I've done, why introduce more bugs, potential breakpoints to the system when the audience is going to be, they're going to be on their own shit. They're maybe going to be watching you, and really what they want is not shit to stop midway through the show because something got unplugged or something has to be rebooted. And so eventually it became like, I don't know, you know, if you got a big spectacle of a show and the DJ's having a pizza delivered to him on stage, which I'm not really, that's not my scene either.
Right.
But there is that maybe a happy medium between like, does it really matter that everything that people are hearing someone is playing? And I sort of ended up falling back to like, well, if what's being played it requires some dexterity, some skill in terms of like, I want to see somebody perform this. If it's going bop, 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 bop,
yeah,
bop, bop over and over again, you can watch me do that. And in sort of the punk rock,
not going to change it.
In the punk rock vein of like, hey, I could be, I get that, right? It could be like 3 chords. Hey, I could be that guy. I was always a little more of an elitist from the Berkeley thing of like, I don't want to just be that guy. I want to see that guy being like, damn, how's that guy do that?
Right. And have you ever seen the not to cut you, have you ever seen the YouTube video of the DJ it's electronic and he's got 3 big screens? All of a sudden you hear doon 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 and it goes to Windows 10 or whatever, and like all of a sudden the crowd just starts like booing. Well, then all of a sudden it's like doon doon doon, and it like it's booting back up, and then he incorporates that. It was all pre-planned. And then the next song is like whatever, if he made the song or whatever, but it's like mixing the Windows songs into like the next techno track, and the crowd goes nuts because they knew that it wasn't because they thought everything crashed and shit the bed. Turns out, you know, it was all pre-planned, but it was like a good cool down moment. It was great.
No, that's super good. And I always love clever. Like it's always like, you know, clever or genius. I tend to go with clever. Like clever is typically more fun. It's a more guarantee of fun.
Like the first guy that did
but clever is typically more of a sure.
Oh yeah, like the first guy that did the Empire, the Darth Vader march on was scratching. If you're on the scratch battle, it's like a 15-year-old video, but he was like the song and he's stopping. It's like nah nah nah, and he's got the other record nah nah nah, awesome. And the crowd goes great, you know. But back then that was revolutionary. So anyway. Yeah. We could probably, talk for 3 years on music stories, but I got to dive into tech because it's supposed to be a tech show. But
that's right.
I love music too, so it falls into. But like, I guess I'll start with the NFT game.
Yeah.
So when I heard it, it was I don't want to say it smells like smells like shit or whatever, but let's see if this works. But then you're telling me you can't get a project done because you got to get it and do an NFT. And I'm like, all right, we got to talk about this. So I guess what have you done so far? And I guess, where do you see, is the market picking up? Is it already dead, or where do you see this thing taking off?
So I'm a big evangelist for blockchain generally. I think it is the most exciting disruptive thing. You know, we're old enough. Well, I'll speak for myself. I'm old enough to have seen enough of these sort of phases of real disruption in technology come along. And I think that, blockchain is as cornerstone as internet or as the PC.
Well, then someone just chipped a quantum computer, was it 2 weeks ago, Randy? And in my opinion, they said this is the greatest breakthrough since the PC. So now with blockchain and quantum computing on a chip, like, yeah, this thing, it's going to get nuts in the next few years.
Well, I don't think so. There's Andreas Antonopoulos. I can shoot you a link. He does a video talking about the encryption for blockchain for Bitcoin private keys, and sort of disarms the threat of quantum. But the other thing with quantum is that, and I don't know, I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of delivering a quantum computer. I think that's going to be an arms race. Here's the thing. If quantum is going to be a threat to Bitcoin, it's a bigger.
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to speed it up.
It's a bigger threat to everybody, to banking.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to speed it up.
So yeah, so I think that it will evolve to keep up with that. Yes. So, what was your question with the quantum thing?
We're going NFT. I was just talking about.
Yeah. So, so I think I'm a big advocate for the space generally. The NFT thing pulled my attention in a big way. We put together, basically, we did a startup company for this. We cooled our jets for the minute. The reason for that was it became this thing where, so one of the things that I've always kind of been but I've always had sort of an advantage in that, I'm a real relationships guy. I have tentacles in lots of really weird, disjointed lanes, right? And so for something like this, I was immediately like, okay, the relationship between being able to serialize for uniqueness, digital art, and the foundation of my peoples is, arts and entertainment people who have made the transition from, records and CDs and movies and video into digital. And for the most part, the promise of it has ended up being pretty limiting, right? So like, it's not like, I guess it like, those damn record companies, you miss them now, don't you? Right? Like there's an element of like, sure, you can go on YouTube, get yourself 1 million followers, and then maybe a company will give you a record deal for a single. Justin Bieber had to prove himself with 3 or 4 singles before he got an album. Like they wouldn't even do it with him, right? And a Prince or a Bruce Springsteen or a Bob Dylan, or you go down the list, would never have a career because, Prince didn't have a hit until his 4th record. Springsteen about that far along. Billy Joel, David Bowie, go down the list of people where it was like, they really had to be developed. Sure. And the record label enabled them to like quit their job slinging eggs to go be an artist. Where now it's like, oh, you're expected to like sling your eggs, learn how to be a great artist, learn how to be a great marketing person, learn how to be like, and now some people will do that. You can say, well, toughen up. That's the way it is. But I think there's a lot of artists that have just, it's narrowed down the promise of kind of everything's going to be digital and it's open to everyone. I think it's been not quite what we expected. Okay. All that being said, and I say this from the standpoint of like, I know plenty of stars that make shit tons of money still. And there's still plenty of people we know that are talented that work for beer. Everybody starts off working for beer. but the middle class is really shrunk, maybe in everything, but certainly in the entertainment business and music. And I think that the NFT felt to me like an opportunity to re-inject value into digital work. So it wouldn't be the golden bullet, but it might be a new lane for artists to be able to get paid for the work that they do in a way that can't really be controlled by big companies, by big digital media platforms. Okay. So I get Dennis White all excited about it. Get Kevin Saunderson involved. I got, a long list of people that all kind of signed on for it. There was always a part of it, though, to me, that was distasteful. We're in a pandemic. You're selling your fart for $100,000. You're selling a tweet for $2 million. All y'all, right? And I also know how, we were ready to go. I mean, I had budgets for PR people. We were kind of had it together. We had a string of and I'm not going to talk about what the projects were. I would love to, but we're still probably do them, right? But we had kind of a lineup of releases of what we were going to do and why and how we're going to put them together. And it was this thing, we got to rush. We got to be the first. We got to get Cranes to do a thing that Loud Baby is the first, NFT company in Michigan. The week that I was ready to go with this, but I was still having these kind of feelings about the technology, yes, the mission, yes, but if I really roll this out, I mean, I did a Facebook announcement about it. Among my friends saw it, but we didn't really go beyond that. So it's easy to walk it back for a minute. But I thought if I really throw this out there, and I'm glad we didn't, Bob, because it was 2 weeks later when it was like NFTs are a freaking joke. Everybody's moved on. But it was like the day after I woke up and was like, I was ready to go with the press release, or not, a couple days after, it was like Jack White did one. Then Eminem dropped one. Then it became like, all right, well, if it's not, now my Michigan play is done.
So is it a joke or isn't it? Yeah.
It's not a joke, but it's going to be the kind of thing where, a lot of this stuff, Jeff Bezos' e-commerce, Amazon. I mean, I did a web store probably before he did.
Right.
Too early. The first business my wife and I started was an Indonesian import gallery in Birmingham. Okay. Which, if we'd have opened it 5 years ago, we'd probably be killing it. We opened it. I'll tell you what, it was before the Bali bombing. So Bali bombing put Indonesia on the map for most Michiganders. Not in a good way, but it put it on the map. So we're selling shit that was dope, that if we were in San Francisco or New York, people have been would have understood how dope it was. But we were too ahead of the game. So another lesson I learned was and even the thing with even the Detroit techno stuff. Now I got no complaints. I had a great ride with it. But those guys, the next wave of electronic music people, EDM people, they're the people that got $50 million. None of the Detroit guys were too early.
You had to get a residency in Vegas to make any money now.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. So it just sort of became this thing where, I was like, well, I just want to sit on this for a minute and wait till it settles down to a point where now it's not just Me Too hype. We'll roll it out.
Yeah.
For the same reasons that got me excited about doing it in the first place. And with the same concepts, I mean, we've got concepts that relate to the Detroit techno scene for this that are incredible. We got concepts relating to photographers that are iconic photographers and people that, lots of really, and, relationships of people that really would be some incredible stuff. But it just, I had to cool our jets on it for the minute with that.
I don't know if the pandemic did anything, though. It absolutely skyrocketed the collectibles market, baseball cards, Star Wars, because what else are you going to do? Now, I just looked at a stupid Macho Man Slim Jim figure. I bought it for $50. It's worth they're selling it for 200, 250 now on eBay. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So like that market's just absolutely exploded. I don't want to belittle NFT because I understand it, but I kind of put it in that, collectibles. I got to have it. It's unique,
That's entirely what it is. And honestly, the investment component of it, and again, being like a big sort of, have you read the Bitcoin Standard? That's a book that everybody should read. I mean, it's not even 3/4 of the book doesn't even talk about Bitcoin. It talks about what is money. What is it? I'm a musician, man. Like, I don't study economics, right? Like, it's when you actually start to look at like what it is, where should you be putting your money? Why is real estate a good investment? Why? Why is it, right? What's inflation? Is inflation like how much is your Netflix going up, or your gas, or your loaf of bread, or how much does it cost to put your kid in college, buy health insurance, buy a house, stuff that really matters to, well, those things with collectibles, it's hinged on what is hard, what is finite. If I have an autographed, copy of, The Great Malenko by Joe and Joey, I might or I might not have that. But if I have that, well, that's valuable, right? I mean, there's only so many of them, right?
So let me ask you a question. Not the $1 million question, but the question that just been since this whole thing started. I understand a painting, and then that painting is, let's say it's 10 grand.
Yeah.
And then so you make posters that are $20.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me because the painting's unique. Mm-hmm. The poster, you know the difference.
Yeah.
With digital, how do you differentiate that? Does that make sense?
Right, it does. So, and that was the thing to sort of get my head around with the whole thing. But what it comes down to is that you really are buying the serial number, right? So yes, if it's like, so my first thing with NFTs, I'm like, oh, well, so does the JPEG have some code embedded in the no, it doesn't. It's you buying I'm telling you, Bob, that you're going to buy this digital thing I made in Photoshop because you think if it was made by me, it's going to be worth something one day. The fact that you got the original from the artist, and you're going to be able to prove that because the artist has also signed off on the fact that this is the serial number on the blockchain for this piece that I did. And you bought it. You could take that and you could duplicate it, throw it up on Reddit where people could save it. It's digital, so you can copy it. What I say to that though is, and this is it's kind of like, and I got in this debate actually with Dennis. Dennis is an art collector. Dennis White, he was like talking about like, I said, all right, so Dennis, you like Andy Warhol paintings. Look, I mean, literally somebody in their companies and people that do this, could make a copy of a painted copy, not just what is it, Gilkey? Is that the term? Gilkey, the fancy printout of an artwork.
Yeah.
Okay. But you'd have somebody who actually is going to paint the Campbell soup cans using the same type of paint that Warhol, he didn't do it, but his people did, right? The same kind of, the weight and and actually literally make it so it's, down to a forensic level the same. You're going to hang it on your wall. If you come in my house and you like Andy Warhol and you see that hanging over my fireplace, you're like, you won't say anything. Oh, that's cool. Well, that's the original, Bob. Is it cooler? No, there's no difference. Well, the only difference is that I get to say it was the original. So in the digital space, it's the same thing as I say, like, okay, I've got this, cyberpunks, bitmap thing, hanging on my wall. But I'm gonna say, but that's the original one, and it's got the code on the bottom. So it is weird. I do think that I think it's going to take a while before it's going to be generational because you're a gamer and involved in games. I mean, there is that thing. I mean, my kids, what do they want for Christmas? I'll buy you something. Can I have like Robux so I can buy a t-shirt for my avatar? and listen, mean, I don't know if you know the story. I mean, my wife and I, we built the first city of Detroit in Second Life, which was the first metaverse. And we were, I mean, that's a whole, we can get into that if you feel like it, but we were like, that was a big leap actually for Loud Baby, was when we started fucking around with building in the virtual world. But that was really where, like, you know, you started to realize like the value of fake shit. Doesn't matter. Like,
well, you could sell, I know, like I was a big Diablo 2 guy. And to get certain gems, people would pay $1,000 for, because they knew it took you, 18 months of playing this game to obtain that gem, weapon, whatever,
So I definitely think NFT stuff. I think the digital art thing, I think boomers will never get it. Most Gen Xers aren't going to get it. Millennials, half of them will, and most Gen Z will. And beyond them, I think it's going to be like, it's just going to be like, my money is, my kids now, like, they actually, like, my daughter, like, she's like 13. She's like, money is gross. Like, she had to actually like touch some money. It was like, and it's like,
and not just pennies, you're talking like dollars.
Yeah, it's just like, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, and I didn't get into the fact that it's like, yeah, there's like, it's been in how many ass pockets and cocaine on it and all kind of shit. You're like, just the concept of like, these kids are growing up in the pandemic, so they're already like, everything's gross.
Right.
So like, yeah, money's like really gross. Like, why I can't just be like, here, let me send you, okay, thanks. And we move on. So I just think that, I'm going to buy this rare thing, and I'm going to buy it because I like it. And I'm also going to buy it because I think it's going to go up in value because you're the shit.
Yeah.
I just think that's, so we chilled on it for now, because I was like, I just think we'll get all into this. And
when you can, when you can wiener flash it, I think that's when it's going to explode. Like, I buy a $10,000 painting, I traipse people into my house and I say, look, you know what I mean? I have the baseball signed by Babe Ruth. I can show it. Look, you know what I mean? I think right now I think it's hard to tout that you own one of these without like a press release.
Well, and the big thing is that, the presentation, I mean, I love what Beeple did, right? So Beeple, where he was doing them, and he kind of, I mean, we were going to, when we end up doing it, we're going to do it. We're just going to completely bite on the way he was doing it. But basically, you're selling the NFT, but you're selling it in a dope picture frame that's got, it's got the QR code and the hologram of authenticity. And I mean, you paid $500,000 for the thing. It's the least we could do, right? Like,
right.
But it is that thing where, like, you need to have it. So if I'm going to buy, like, even those, they're really popular. I mean, I'm not a basketball guy, but the NBA's got those hot shots thing where you're buying plays. Like, you're just buying like some basketball, winning shot. And then initially they're selling like the Michael Jordan winning shots, but now they've gotten down to like the third string guy on Tampa Bay's basketball team. Do they have a basketball team?
Well, I know they got smart with the like 1 of 24 cards, like, like Zion Williamson patch card, 1 of 24. They come out, they immediately are brand new, worth $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 just out of the box.
I think it's a big thing is going to be how you can display those things, right? Like, so there'll be, a market for like, a hardware market for cool ways to display NFTs. I think that'll be a big thing. So I think the next feels to me like it kind of tech evolution in the blockchain space kind of revolves around the Bitcoin halving cycle in a way, because that influences kind of the price of Bitcoin and also the hype of the mainstream media and just people. And so then that in turn goes into, startups that are going to get venture capital, that people are going to be excited about it. I think the NFT thing, it's sort of like Ethereum got its start before the last halving, right? It was kind of the new thing. Now it's really starting to be like, okay, It's big boy pants. I think
that guy's an alien, by the way.
He for sure, yeah.
That guy's not from this earth.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen him speak or talk
Metallic,
or act.
no, he's but yeah, I think we got a few years. It's going to take a little while. I think, there's another thing now, these like social tokens. We've seen about that now. It's kind of the next thing after NFTs, right? So this is the idea that like,
not like what they're doing in China where you have to behave and like, then you get to get into places. You're not talking about that, are you?
No, I am glad they kicked the miners out though. That's good for the space.
Oh yeah.
They kicked all the Bitcoin miners out. That's really good. But no, social tokens are basically that, and this could apply to any business, any brand, any content creator, to say, okay, so you're, the popular TikTok star of the moment, and you can issue a crypto token that your fans can either buy or you can distribute to them, and it becomes kind of an economy based around your popularity, and people can buy and sell and then redeem them. So you could be like, okay, if you have 1,000 of my token, you can get backstage to see me when I appear, or you can get discounts in my store. And none of this is things that can't be done without blockchain and crypto, right? Chuck E. Cheese tokens. You go in, you pay for the tokens, you're putting the tokens in the machine. They're not redeemable for anything. So you're going to leave there. It's good for them because you leave there with tokens that you never spend. You still go through your piggy bank and like, I still got goddamn Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
Everybody does.
But it becomes this thing where it's an ecosystem of commerce. And on the blockchain, that's going to be huge. I mean, look for a Raoul Paul video about that on YouTube about it. I mean, it's sick. I mean, this is like really, really disruptive stuff. But it hits me like texting hit me when that first came. I was like, that's fucking crazy. Why would I want to text?
Well, especially because you had to hit number 2 3 times to get the letter C. That's why he texted.
Well, that's true. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah.
Until I got my BlackBerry, I never texted anyone. Yeah. Hey, this is if anyone is wondering, this is part 1 of like a 19-part series. Tommy, we could talk to you for 3 weeks, but in the best interest, well, I gotta cut you loose, man. We can find you on Spotify, Charm Farm, Inner City. We can find you at loudbaby.com. Do you even have a LinkedIn profile? I don't think you do.
I never look at it. I do. I think I do. I made one 10 years ago.
We'll get you on Spotify. At least you get a 0.001 cents for a royalty check when they buy Superstar. But no, I can't thank you enough for the time. Honestly, I could listen to your stories for weeks. Maybe we'll have you back in a month or two. I want to dive more into the blockchain stuff. It's fascinating to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Onyx, appreciate it. On behalf of Bob and Randy, do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.